Hi, magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Trixie Cruz-Angeles. Ito po ang Luminous. Let me check lang po, paki-check lang po if I have audio. Si Trixie Cruz-Angeles. Ay, meron. Okay. Sige, I got it. Just check your comments. Magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. I did promise a second live today because I noticed online na may mga, unusual combinations na naman na lumalabas, such as, but not limited to, Robredo Sara, Robredo Duterte, may mga ganyan. Of course, yung walang kamatayang Isko Sara, and so on going on. Plus, there are so many rumors that are just all over the place. So we've come to this point where it's less than 60 days yung elections. Um, it's a little over 50 na lang. And BBM and Inday Sara have posted very high ratings. Kumbaga, diba, dun sa mga surveys, consistent po, daming taong lumalabas. But this is not the time to get overconfident also. Ang kailangan natin bantayan are several things. Well, one is that many people are raising the alarm about cheating. And the reason hindi namin pa pinapatulan lahat yon is, number one, we need to know where it comes from. Number two, nanggagaling because we don't know if these are just scare tactics that are being used so that we will lose confidence or trust in the electoral system, 'di ba? O kaya yung kumbaga madi-discourage ang mga tao sa pag-participate dito sa eleksyon. Of course, Attorney Larry is also raising the alarm na baka nga naman daw yung ibang mga surveys kargado yung sa Senado, they're making it appear that some of the senatorial candidates are more popular than they actually are, and so on. So ngayon, we continue with what we know as the battle of perceptions. So, nakikita natin, 'di ba, lumalaban yung kabila. So they're holding rallies and making it appear, whether it is through Photoshop or through press release or whatever, they're trying to fake it till they make it. So regardless of how many attend their rallies and so on, palalabasin nila, wow, super successful. Wow, gaining si Lenny and so on. So there's certain objective standards that we can fall back on. Nakikita natin na maaari naman natin kilatisin base dun sa mga surveys. And dun nga sa nakikita din nating crowds who are less likely to be bussed in. Kumbaga, yung sumasalubong kay BBM, nakikita natin they line up on the streets and so on. Tapos yung gigil ba, nakikita natin nagigil na gigil na makita si BBM, yung certain actions and words, kumbaga mahirap i-script yun, hindi ganun kagaling ang ordinaryong tao mag ano ng ganong klaseng idea, 'di ba, na right at the spur of the moment they'll show this level of enthusiasm. Pero we also have to be watchful kasi hindi naman din papayag yung kabila, yung mga opponents na matuloy-tuloy yung momentum. So we have to watch out for that. The reason mas watchful ako dun sa ginagawa nila kasi indicative ito. Kumbaga, ang pinaglalaban dito ngayon are hearts and minds. So they need to have a good showing. They need to indicate the possibility that nakakapag-rally si Lenny so that, well, in case there are issues with the electoral process, meron silang basehan. Kumbaga, hindi lalabas na BBM is in the lead and then biglang mananalo si Madam Lenny. It has to be plausible. However, like I keep saying, it's going to be very difficult to cheat the electoral process kung ang laki-laki po ng lamang ng kandidato. Gayunpaman, it doesn't mean that these people will stop. They'll look at things like post-election scenarios and so on. This is a crucial period para sa atin to hold on, to not allow to be divided, the UniTeam to be divided. So, yung mga supporters ng mga kandidato, what do we need to watch out for and what should we be doing? Number one, intriga within the camp. Remember, at ang leaders dito are of course BBM and Inday Sara, and they set the tone already. It isn't BBM Sara, it is UniTeam. Kumbaga, they were two individuals, no, pero nung nagsanib puwersa sila, it means that what they do is mutually support each other. Meaning walang nagsusolo. And hindi dapat natin tinitiis yung mga taong nagsasabi, hindi, BBM lang kami. O yung ibang mga tao who will say na, hindi, Inday lang kami. No, the whole purpose, both, they need each other. Remember this, BBM who wins without Inday Sara is going to be constantly attacked. Inday Sara, who is vice, will have a difficult time kung kontrapartido ang maging presidente. So we need the president and the vice president to be elected jointly, and so hindi natin sila pwedeng pabayaan. Para dun sa talagang loyalista at gustong-gusto talaga si BBM, and for whom Inday is, well, not a very well-known person to them, then we have to accept the fact that BBM needs her and Inday needs BBM. So do we, by the way. Hindi gusto natin ng tahimik na administrasyon na hindi ganun kadali i-agitate. Kasi nakita po natin in the past, going on 6 years, si Presidente Duterte ayaw patahimikin ng kanyang mga katunggali, ng kanyang mga political opponents dahil nga nakikita nila yung possibility of a Lenny takeover noon. We don't want that to happen in the next administration. So ngayon, mga makakarinig kayo, kanina sa Karambola or was it sa Tambayan, mayroong humihirit ng intriga. Ano daw, parang pinahiya daw ni BBM si Inday nung sinalungat niya na si Robin Padilla is the 12th candidate of the UniTeam. Hindi po pwedeng kinorek lang ni BBM. Kailangan yung pinahiya and all that. Hindi dapat tayo yung nag-uumpisa ng mga ganyang klaseng rumors at hindi dapat tayo nagpapapatol sa ganong klaseng mga pananalita. Hindi dapat tayo papayag na may mga attempts na buwagin yung UniTeam. At yan po yung purpose dun sa paglalabas ng mga unusual combinations such as, but not limited to, Robredo Sara. Diyos ko, nayanig yata ako sa ganun. Tapos, meron kang makikita na BBM Soto. And yung mga ganon. Ang isa lang po ang punteriya niyan, targetin yung UniTeam. So, and then there are rumors and rumors of whatever going around. Yung mga tipong, dadayain si BBM. You know, the effect of that is people might be discouraged from voting. So, always be on your guard. Tapos, ang daming lumalabas na rumors na kesyo may Smartmatic, kesyo may ganito, kesyo may ganyan. This is the first thing we have to remember. Why would it be so easy to catch the cheating now? Bakit papayagan if meron ng makinarya para mag-cheat, bakit nila ilalabas 'to ngayon? Bakit ganun kadali silang mahuli? Ang tingin ko dito is that we have to pay attention kung kanino nanggagaling yung mga rumors, sino yung naghihikayat na mayroon ngang dayaan and all that. And if you will look at every single candidate, parang wala akong nakikitang reactions sa kanila tungkol dun sa possibility ng cheating. Again, yes, Senator Amy had or has a Senate investigation. Pero ang purpose nun is to put all of these on record para kung sakasakaling may mangyari nga na dayaan, andito na, nabigyan na ng notice ang COMELEC na kung hindi sila umaksyon over the possibilities that are opened up by these actions, then we can hold them liable and responsible. And we can even actually insinuate a conspiracy on their part if it is indeed a cheating mechanism. So, there's really no need to panic because I will look at the candidates. If the candidates have not paid any attention to the rumors, then neither should we give it that much credence. But we must always, as always, remain watchful. And remain watchful about certain people who are trying to persuade us towards a certain end. Diba? Hindi lahat po ng magbubulgar ng cheating ay mayroong public interest in mind. 'Di ba? How do we know that this isn't going to justify some other person's kumbaga a takeover later on, or or it's just a form of sowing intrigue among the candidates. Be careful na hindi tayo nagpapamanipulate dun sa mga tao na kalaban pala ng ating kandidato. Yun po ang iingatan natin. We must be reasonable all the time. So, we always have to be critical and skeptical kapag may taong nagsasabi, hala, may cheating, ganito, ganito. Um, First of all, also remember that if we cause people to lose faith in the electoral system or distrust the electoral system, this is actually a violation of election rules. Ah, but even worse than that, hindi natin gusto mag-fail yung elections. Okay. Now, yung mga frequently asked questions kasi hindi naman lahat nakakaalam. We cannot change the date of the elections anymore. Pero gustong gawin yan ng mga kalaban ni BBM. Kasi they think that if they can buy more time, baka makakonvince pa sila ng additional people na bumoto para dun sa kandidato nila. Whereas with BBM, the timetable is actually too long. Kung pwede nga bukas na mag-eleksyon, that works for BBM. So, yun yung mga competing interests dyan. But no way can the election date be changed anymore unless it is by law. So, I don't see that happening anytime soon. And it's very, very unlikely that that's going to happen. Sabi ni Lani Soneha Teocson, maganda yung ginawa ni Commissioner Garcia na pinuntahan yung NPO, National Printing Office, kanina dahil binusisi niya yung mga na-print na balota. So yes, so this is the responsible action to take. Pero take note, neither the COMELEC nor even the Senate has taken note of this incident. Kung baga, yung pagpunta ni Com Garcia doon is still in the ordinary and natural course of business. So information has reached them. Merong possibility that some rules have been violated. The inspection there is initial to a possible investigation later on. May reason na bang panic? Wala pa rin po akong nakikita niyan. Besides, panicking makes us lose rational thought and we might not make the right decisions about it. So every time meron tayong maririnig na rumor of this or rumor of that, stop and think first. Sino ba nagpakawala ng rumor na yon? Number one. Number two, is it even reasonable? Is it within the bounds of reality? And two, are we making the correct conclusion base dito? So, number one, na-print yung ballots without observers. Do we automatically conclude na may mali na ginawa sa balota? What is the possibility? What is the wrong that could possibly be committed kapag walang mga observers doon? Usually, pag ino-observe natin yung printing ng balota, tinitignan ng mga observers if tama yung form, tama yung pagka-imprenta, and that there is no slip-up in the security measures taken, not just in the printing of the ballots themselves, but in the safeguarding them so they don't fall into the wrong hands at magamit later on. The other thing na kailangan sinisiguro ay yung tamang amount lang po ng mga balota ang mapuprint. Hindi po dapat sumusobra yan kasi magagamit po ang sobra for people who want to stuff ballot boxes. Okay. Reaction sa sinabi ni Carpio na may decision ng Supreme Court sa estate tax, di na ba pwede mag-motion for reconsideration? Okay, I will repeat. We have to look to the leaders. Why are these people raising it? Okay, bakit nila nire-raise itong estate tax issue? Does it affect the candidacy of BBM? Ano yung sinasabi nila? Tax evader? No. Who owes the taxes? The estate. Hindi yung individuals. Hindi po yung mga administrators or executors ng will or the administrators of the estate. Ang binabayaran ng estate taxes out of the property that consists of that the estate consists of. So, does it affect BBM's candidacy? No, it does not. Why are they raising it? Intriga lang po yan. Because people will make the conclusion na masamang tao si BBM simply because the estate allegedly has not paid any taxes. Pero if you will take note, bakit ang tagal-tagal? Yung issue na yan, buhay pa rin. Because by Supreme Court resolution and all that, sinasabi naman daw ng mga Marcoses is that, go ahead, why don't you execute on the property? Now, the estate taxes are supposed to be paid out of that property. So kung kunwari may nakitang secret bank account, bagawing bahagi yan ng estate, pero yung estate taxes ay kukunin dun din sa ano. If you allege that that is part of the estate, then dun din kukunin sa supposedly secret bank account na yon. The heirs are not going to pay out from their own pocket. The estate taxes must be taken from the estate. Ngayon, kung hindi yan binabayaran ng administrator ng estate, pwede namang i-attach ng BIR yung mga property na yon to satisfy the payment for the estate taxes. So may remedyo po 'yan. Nire-raise lang ng ibang mga tao yung mga issues regarding the unpaid taxes of the estate para mang-intriga. Because what are the conclusions you're going to make out of that? The estate has not paid taxes, nor has the BIR acted on the property that has been declared part of the estate. Ewan ko kung bakit ginagawang ano. It's a dud actually. But it's designed to confuse people kasi yung ordinaryong tao, hindi nila naiintindihan yung estate proceedings, pero naiintindihan nila yung term na hindi nagbayad ng taxes. So they will make that leap uh, in logic to conclude that there is something wrong here. Now, the something wrong here is that why aren't the usual processes kicking in? And if it is true that the estate has not paid taxes over the course of several years, why has nobody acted on it? Hindi naman obligasyon ng mga if the administrators say, o di sige, go ahead, act on to. No, kunin nyo yung property para masatisfy yung taxes. Bakit hindi ginagawa? Sabi ni Karina Tamayo, there are properties already levied for the purpose. So, ayun na nga, that's even worse. Ibig sabihin, wala na pala yung issue na yun. But I understand kasi the last time that this was explained by BDM, what he was saying is, well, go ahead. If you think that there are taxes due on the property, then go ahead. That property is not even in our hands. So, bakit sila yung magiging responsible for this? Now, what we're seeing here is a story in shortcut. Raise nila, sabihin, may tax evader kasi yung estate di pa nagbabayad ng taxes. So those who are not in the know, that's all they will know. Ay, hindi nagbayad ng taxes. Was it BBM who didn't pay taxes on his own income tax? No, of course not. The estate is responsible for the estate tax. If the administrators don't pay it, then the BIR can levy on the property and satisfy the payment of taxes. So shortcut lang siya. Gumagawa ng intriga where the processes of law are adequate naman to address that if they want to address it. May violation ba sa misleading campaign paraphernalia? Wala akong nakaalala sa it's part of election propaganda. So there are underhanded tactics. Ito yung sinasabi ko parate. Why is it that the first thing that you think of is a court action? When what you have to do when there is misinformation is to provide the correct information. So kung meron kunwari, naglabas ng poster na number 10 si BBM, indis na number 7, then ang sagot dyan or ang pagsalag dyan ay yung maglabas tayo ng information tuloy-tuloy na ang numero po ni BBM dun sa balota ay number 7 at hindi po number 10. Okay? Hindi kasi alam niyo yung pagpaparusa, hindi yung masasagot eh. The problem is the misinformation. Bakit ang response is let's put that person in jail? Does it change the misinformation? No. We have to change the misinformation and you do that by providing the correct information. Tandaan niyo po ha, na yung ganitong klaseng approach to a problem is a very this is also how BBM approaches problems in governance. That parati kasing 'di ba, we talked about this earlier na bakit gano'n sa tambayan we talked about this that we don't want a government or governance that is led by media, and media loves to catch corruption cases. Of course we're going to do that, but that's the ordinary course of business. That is not the be all and end all of governance. Part of the what government has to do is to create wealth, to create better quality of life, to eradicate poverty, ensure peace and order, and all that. Ang nangyayari dito is the media has turned us into a people who are always so scared na ninanakaw yung taxes natin that we cannot afford very much development. Take the case of the last Aquino administration. Walang korap kung walang mahirap. So the entire focus of his administration was catching people allegedly who were committing acts of corruption. But nothing got built. No universal health care law was, had been expanded to include as many people as possible. Diba? The programs to eradicate poverty were not complete. Education didn't get the boost that it needed. Kumbaga, there was very little development. All of the focus was simply on catching corruption, and look where we ended up after that. Not only that, there was no focus on creating on ensuring that government officials were competent. Or so you had a government run by a student by by a less by well, a lot of incompetent people, or and there was so much corruption going on by the very people who promised to eradicate it. Kasi sila, they were beyond the reach, 'di ba? So they were also creating a dichotomy. Kumbaga, lumalabas na huli sila ng huli kapag hampas lupa yung yung allegedly nagko-corrupt o kalaban sa politika. Pero ang mga kabaro, sa tingin ninyo, meron bang nahuli? Sino ba yung mga pinakulong nila? Jinggoy, Bong Revilla, JPE. Hindi nila mga kaalyado tong mga 'to. Pero yung mga kaalyado o yung mga anomalya diyan sa MRT, ano na nangyari? Wai, 'di ba? Na sabi ni Feby, mula sa top 12 UniTeam senatoriables, maybe it's time na sila naman i-promote heavily. Ako pa talaga sinabihan ninyo. Ako nga yung nag-umpisa ng pag-i-interview dito sa mga UniTeam candidates, but we also included other candidates. Yung ibang mga kandidato nga nakilala ninyo dito na sa Luminous eh. So bakit ako po yung sinasabihan ninyo? And in fact, we have always been heavily promoting these senators. Kaya lang, kahit kayo, minsan hindi kayo interesado, pino-post ko naman parati sa Luminous, tapos ngayon na nakikita ninyo yung surveys, ako pa sasabihan ninyo na heavily promote these people. May ni-raise din po si Sir Glenn Chong na inaccept daw po yung fake ballots ng 2019 elections. Posible ba to ulit gawin? So these ballots possibly were not printed by the National Printing Office or something like that, but they were taken and they were used during the 2019 elections. Well, I don't know. I don't see any evidence of that right now. And then there again, that's the attitude. Yun yung problema. You're worrying about something like that when the real danger is out there. Remember that the Solgen acted on the Rappler issue. You know why? Because the misinformation campaign is far more worrisome than the possibility where there's no evidence yet that exists of how the cheating, or if cheating is being conducted already by Smartmatic and Comelec. The cheating also includes the proliferation of exaggerated news to favor certain candidates, and then the takedowns of accounts that are related to the leading candidate. Eh, we're being misled. It's possible that there is misdirection here. You get so concerned about the technical aspects of cheating that has not occurred yet, whereas right under our nose, there these people go. Well, kung hindi gumalaw ang Solgen, what would happen? Rappler is administering the debate that's being conducted by the COMELEC. They're the ones, well, if it wasn't suspended, if the memorandum of agreement had not been suspended, they would be fact checking. They would have access to certain information, untransmitted returns. The, this was something that, yes, we had rightfully worried about. And we have to continue just because the MOA had been suspended, okay na, relax na tayo. Solgen has it in hand. No, we still have to watch out for the misinformation. Right? And no, not every single act of misinformation is actionable in court. The obligation dies with us to correct it, to provide the additional information to correct the impression. Yan yung talagang campaigning. That's what campaigning is all about. You don't rely on the courts as a resort to correct actions made by people. Do you think that that solves the problem? Does it correct it? People who have already been misled by the misinformation, mako-correct ba yon by going after the people who made it and trying to put them in jail? It doesn't. You have to make sure that the answer isn't always in filing a case in court. The answer sometimes is as simple as calling them out and providing the correct information. Ah, I'm just really worried that you're all so fixated on on certain things. And I have kumbaga hindi kasi ako patola about those things eh. I am far more worried about other things. I'm far more worried about yung mga intrigahan, yung mga low-key bashing by people who are supposed to be supporters. Okay? Mm, sabi ni Marlon Salvador Bandal, what can you say about Senator Dillon's statement that the new COMELEC Commissioner Amy Neri should resign because of allegations of receiving money from Bilibid Suhol daw? Um, why call on her to resign? Why not file an actual case against her? Of course, she's immune, no? Kailangan, But she's an ad interim appointee. Hindi pa siya po dumadaan sa Commission on Appointments. So it can be raised in the Commission on Appointments. Sabi ni Ted S., guys, the way to combat false information is to spread correct information. Just like the media war of Ukraine versus Russia is worse than the actual war. Correct. Sabi ni Chad Baritugo, tawang-tawa ako sa 70,000 sibuyas na upaten sa rally. I think, guys, that we have also been so conditioned into thinking that filing a case in court is always going to be the answer. Parang parating ganon, di ba? Pakulong, paano, demanda and all that. Whereas in the information wars, that's, yeah, that's the weakest way of addressing it. Lalong-lalo na kung kung hindi siya actionable, it's not libel. Ang red tagging nga, 'di ba, hindi siya libel. Well, not necessarily libel. That's why BBM, sabi ni Elmas Sepacio Henson, doesn't want to attend the COMELEC debate dahil Rappler is behind it. My goodness. Well, yeah, that's one of those things. Like I keep telling people, BBM is correct. At least my opinion is that BBM is correct in not attending. Kasi people are just going to score points off him. Na? All the candidates can just gang up on him and try to make themselves look good. Worse, if it is a panel, the panel will try to score points on him, throw him the harshest questions, raise the specter of of the old Marcos regime, and you know, and in general, just not be satisfied with he's in the lead. It will always benefit everybody who's looking to score to have him there and be their punching bag. So why do that? By the way, hindi naman sila umangal nung si Noynoy hindi po umattend ng mga debate, 'di ba? Wala naman po yatang intriga sa loob ng Unity. May naninira lang galing sa ibang kampo, like yung binigyan ng 500 sa supporters sa Nueva Ecija galing sa government daw and so on. Eh ako na nga po yung nagsasabi na nakikita namin, ginagawa sa page namin, ginagawa sa comment section ng Karambola and so on. Hindi nyo nakikita, kami po yung nakakakita. Kaya nga po dinidiscuss namin. As I keep telling everybody, if there is evidence of it, then we will raise it. We can also talk about speculative things, pero we will emphasize that it is pure speculation. But in this instance, it's more than once na nakita na po namin. Yun, sabi ni Pat, wala namang kaso kung hindi a-attend. Eto sabi ni Ian Marvin Abella, simple lang po yan. Kung worried kayo na madadaya sina BBM at Sara, eh di bumoto kayo sa araw ng eleksyon. Si PRRD nga di nadaya dahil sa dami ng bumoto. Si BBM Sara pa kaya? Yes. So, we have to watch out. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there are a lot of positive actions that we can take. Number one is to continue yung ating show of support para sa BBM Sara UniTeam. Uh, Continue to kumbaga, understand also that people will try to draw you into unwinnable arguments or try to upset you. That is the purpose of trolling, to upset you so that you don't think clearly. Huwag tayong patola. Hindi lahat ng mga insinuations kailangan sagutin. Hindi lahat ng mga nire-raise ng kabila kailangan nating gawing argument. Kasi ang purpose talaga ng argumento is to reveal evidence, to indicate the weakness of certain arguments. Pero you only get into that if there is a possibility that you can change another person's mind. Kung wala naman yung possibility, hardcore naman na pink yung kausap ninyo, what is the point in wasting your time? Diba? And getting upset. When you get upset, you will not think clearly, baka kung ano pa masabi ninyo, then, walk away. It's possible. You don't need to answer everything. Why stress yourself? Yeah. Ano po say ninyo sa misleading post si CNN na FB about the top executive of PDP endorsing Lenny disguised as PRRD's blessing for Madam? Like I said, for every bit of misinformation that's out there, you can correct it. Yeah. You can call out, CNN, bakit ganito ang sinasabi ninyo? Actually, si Ben Evardoni, ay umi-endorso kay Lenny, pero humingi siya, nagpaalam siya dahil miyembro siya ng PDP Laban, nagpaalam siya at nagpasintabi, nagpaalam siya, uh, President Duterte, who is also the president of PDP Laban, boss, mag-i-endorso kay Lenny. O sige, di mag-endorso ka, yun yung sagot. Diba? Hindi yung, yes, I support your, hindi, pinayagan lang niya. And you're right, there is a big difference. Pero sa tingin ninyo, may naniniwala doon? Kung may naniniwala, then yes, it's necessary to bring out the information na no, CNN is misleading and misreading the situation, maybe deliberately. So, ang obligasyon natin is to correct that misimpression. Sabi ni Ma'am Pinay Paparazzi, paano naman po sila aangal? Alam naman nila yung limitations ng kandidato nila. What is Noynoy's legacy during his term as president? Wala na pong wangwang. Talaga si Ma'am Pinay, ang harsh nyo. Totoo naman, pero ang harsh, grabe. Sabi ni Ma'am Karen, mag-materialize ba tong tinatry gawing revolution ni retired General Parlade para ma-extend panunungkulan ni PRRD? May sahod daw na 100K ang mga photo editors ng Pink Clowns to make it look like baha caravan nila Kaso tuwing gabi lang yung drone shots, ano 'to, paniki? Gabi lang? Grabe kayo, madam. Alright, um, kahit noon pa, the president has expressed that he is not in favor of RevGov noon. I don't know if he has changed his mind. Pero to do some extra legal action at a time so close to election raises suspicions, 'di ba? Even the president, we don't want him to ruin his legacy by trying to extend his term um, extra legally. Kumbaga hindi yan covered by the law. The president knows his law. We know that election day is set by law. And hindi po yan dapat ma-hold or maaaring i-hold on another date unless there is a failure of election. So ano yung mga failure of elections? Widespread lawlessness, terrorism, certain uh, possibly force majeure that prevents people from going to the polling places. Now, if there was a sudden, uh, ano ba 'to, kung biglang binaha most parts of the country, nagka-global warming like in 2 seconds, that would be for the kind of force majeure that prevents people from going to the polls. So, you'll need a law to delay the elections. And we know, by the way, guys, delaying the elections doesn't work for the leading candidate. It works for his opponents, particularly those na ang lababa pa ng kanilang percentages sa surveys that they want to buy more time to campaign and maybe be able to convince more people. Mm. Why would we want to extend the term of the president? Well, ako personally, I am not prepared to see PRRD go. But I don't also want him to lose his legacy. He is right now the most popular president we've ever had, as in ever, bar none. By trying extrajudicial, extra-legal means to extend his term is going to ruin that legacy. Uh, it it will look really bad if he does it before elections. Right? Um, Even after elections, it will look like a takeover. So right now, I see no compelling reason for it to happen now. Pag kilala ko, Pinklawan na nag-post or nag-comment sa FB, di ako nagre-react. Kasi ayoko mag-away kami at mukhang ganun din naman sila, sabi ni Ma'am Fe. How do we answer, sabi ni Tabasco Chipotle, when the Pinklawan say, paanong walang ninakaw mga Marcoses may nabawi? Can't see an answer in Google because of how the Yellows have monopolized the writing of our history. Meron tanong ako. Okay? They've never been put in jail. And the only person now facing criminal cases is Mrs. Marcos. Why is there a need for you to answer? Are you convinced by them? If this in fact had been a theft or embezzlement, graft, and so on, then they would have faced criminal cases for that. However, what had been filed are forfeiture cases or ill-gotten wealth cases filed by the KCGG. Does that amount to a robbery or theft? No. There's no criminal case, even if there are forfeiture cases. What they could only prove is that there is a certain amount of salary that these people had acquired had during that time, and they have way too many assets uh, in relation to that. So hindi commensurate yung assets nila as compared to what they had earned as government officials. Yun lang po. So they equate the allegedly ill-gotten wealth with robbery. Uh, but I'd like to point out, like I said, it's not a criminal case. Ngayon, if they think that this is grounds for disqualifying a person from holding public office, then why didn't they put that into the law? Ang tagal-tagal na since Cory was president. Why didn't they create a law to address this particular issue? Even up to now, ill-gotten wealth is not a crime. Having ill-gotten wealth is not a crime. Pero ako, personally, why do you want to answer it? It's one of those, roundabout sort of things. They're there to make you look bad. They're not really concerned about the public interest. They want their candidate to win. And they think that they're going to do that by embarrassing you. They failed. Why should you participate in their frustrating exercise? Uh, is there a need? Are you convinced by their argument? Alam nyo, sa totoo lang, for all the sins of Ferdinand Sr., kahit sabihin pa natin the worst possible things he could have done, that could have been done, had been done by Ferdinand Sr., why would it affect BBM? Yan. Was it BBM who has ill-gotten wealth? Possibly only as an heir to his father. Pero most of the cases were Ferdinand and Imelda Marcos. So again, I will ask you, why is there a need for you to answer? You don't really want to participate in that. It's a useless exercise. You've already decided who your candidate is by allowing them to by letting them, meeting them, letting them set the parameters. Talo ka na dun pa lang eh. Why are you drawn into that argument? Is that even necessary? PBM has all the qualifications of a candidate, all the qualifications to become president. Because if he didn't have any, the cases against him would have prospered. So they're looking for another way to bar him from office, and that's by trying to convince people using extenuated logic to convince you otherwise. Sabi ni Kakanuki Alam, tama, attorney, after Pulse Asia result, biglang General Parlade wants a revolutionary government. This is not what we want. We want an election and we will make BBM and Sara UniTeam win on May 9. Yeah. Para sa akin kasi, if there are allegations of cheating and all of that, I want to see the evidence. I don't see that. Kumbaga, ang tingin ko, some of those rumors that are being started about the cheating and all that is so that people will lose faith, and maybe there's a possibility to extend the campaign period by resetting the election date. That doesn't work for BBM. Sabi ni Rendezvous, kung kantsawan lang, okay lang, lahat naman eh. But when it comes to intrigue or worse, misinformation, it's our responsibility to debunk these through critical thinking, asking the right questions, or at the very least, use our common sense and logic to see the BS, then share our thoughts in our own wall for friends and family who can read and think for themselves. Tulad ng pinalulutang, no pun intended, na Lenny Sara tandem, full of BS talaga. Halata talagang nanggagamit lang sila ng ibang tao. Do you know yung mga paglulutang ng mga, no pun intended, na Robredo Sara is an attempt to discredit Inday? It doesn't, di ba? Sino bang sinisiraan diyan? It will cause people who are not solid dun sa UniTeam na, o bakit andyan yung pangalan ni Inday? I mean, just because somebody put her name there doesn't necessarily mean that she agreed, but some people will make that conclusion. Um, Sabi ni Ian, may request siya, wag ko daw po siyang i-greet ng birthday niya today live sa Luminous on YouTube. O sige, si Going Avgeek by Ian, birthday po niya po today. Pero may special request siya na wag natin siyang babatiin ng happy, happy birthday dito sa live natin sa Luminous. Kasi shy siya. So, guys ha, wag niyo pong babatiin ng happy birthday si Going Avgeek by Ian. Kaso sarado na ang utak ng mga Pinklawan, so it's a waste of time, sabi ni Ma'am Feb BO. It's a waste of time na sagutin sila, bardagulan na lang. Mga ganon, 'di ba? 'Pag ang sinasabihan akong bobo ng mga opponents ko sa FB, isa lang ang sagot ko, "Ang mga bobong sinasabihan niyo ang magpapabagsak sa kandidato ninyo." Which is a good one, 'di ba? Para sa akin din, yung mga trolls that go to our wall, sinasabi meron pa, isa kanina pumunta sa karambola sinabi, ano, panay ang criticize ko daw kay Lenny, ang layo-layo ko naman daw sa kanya. Wala daw ako compared to Lenny. Unang-una, masaya akong malayo ako sa kanya. I want her to stay as far away from me as possible. I really don't need to see her, get to know her, or anything like that. So, tuwa ko lang. Number two, number two, malayo naman talaga kami comparatively because I practice law. While she did also, it wasn't to the same extent. Number one. Um, ano pa ba? And she took the NGO route and all that. Pero when I started doing these things online and even if it was still in my own personal account, I tried to make sure that there was some kind of education that was involved here. When we'd make discussions, there would always be some kind of information that was being given out to people who needed that sort of information. So may difference. Kumbaga when she goes online, it isn't to educate people or anything like that. It's really to campaign. So talagang in that sense, hindi kami magkapareho. Kandidato siya eh. Public official siya eh. And I get the added benefit of getting this golden opportunity to be able to criticize because she is a public official. So don't ever, ever, ever tell me, Flor, to stop my criticism because it is a duty. Uh, Sabi ni Hard to be me, I can literally see how the MSM anchors short circuit when they are faced with the survey numbers that PBM is the least seen as corrupt and he's leading on the youth demographic. So satisfying. Diba? It makes you feel so smug. Eh. But remember, we can afford to be smug, but we cannot afford to let misinformation prevail. Mm. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to talk about is this. The PPM, Sarah, UniTeam has natural enemies. Hindi lang po yung mga kalaban nila sa politika, pero yung mga ayaw na manalo sila. Halimbawa, kung itutuloy nila yung drug war and BBM, and both BBM and Sarah have said that they will, yung mga drug lords syempre galit na sa kanila. Yung mga galit kay PRRD might also take it out on Inday. Yung mga aside from the candidates pa 'to, yung mga kandidato who are aligned with the administration, but yet lost an opportunity to continue their service in government because Inday ran, 'di ba? Because of her candidacy. So kailangan natin bantayan din that there are enemies, more enemies than just the political opponents here, than just the other candidates. So kailangan um, part of the reason I think the other candidates are capable of getting so much funding is because ang daming enemies ni Presidente Duterte, lalo-lalo na tong mga drug lords. I'm not saying it's drug lords are funding the candidacies of the other candidates, ha? Pero, or that they knowingly are taking that. But the possibility is there. But, syempre, the drug lords want to make a comeback. Syempre, yung ibang mga nasagasaan ni PRRD, they can take it out on Inday. Or they are worried that with Inday being in government, she will continue in the same vein as her father did. So remember that there are more enemies than we can see. So kaya nga parati akong worry pag kami naglabas ng hala, there's cheating going on. Wait, sinong naglalabas ng rumor na yan? What is the agenda here? So always be careful. I'm not saying that that all of the rumors are untrue. We have no evidence as to whether they are true or not. So in that instance, probably even discussing it is not fruitful. It might have no point because we'll all be speculating. So ingat-ingat lang that we are not swayed by every insinuation of cheating and so on. I will rely, let's say, on Attorney Glenn Chong because he knows what he's talking about. You can see him, he is named, he's not some anonymous source. You can even personally ask him and question what are your motives for this? Is this true? Test his theories and so on. He is named. He is public. He is always and constantly explaining, and he has gained some kind of expertise on that. But I'm not going to believe anonymous sources unless that information can be vetted by third and fourth and fifth parties. Plus, the rumor is not sufficient. For me, I will still need evidence. And it's not just evidence of the, that there's an attempt to commit a crime, but I also want the people doing it to be identified. Thank you kay Halis Grom at saka sa lahat pala hindi ko nababati yung mga nagpadala ng stars. Sabi ni Maria Palaka, hindi rin daw niya binabati si Ian ng happy birthday. So, ayun, sabi ni Pesto, baka daw mahawa pa ako kay Lenny. Well, I hope hindi nakakahawa whatever it is that she has. But I want to correct an impression. No? I am not personally angry at Mrs. Robredo. There is nothing personal in my criticism of her. But I am, how do you call this? Let's use a millennial term for a moment, offended. Or at least very uncomfortable with the idea that the standards of her party or even of herself are so low that she thinks that a person with such limited experience as she has can can presume to become the leader of this country. The leadership, the presidency is already so complex. So many decisions are made. You have to make policy. You have to execute the laws. You have to make sure that there is a goal that we're trying to reach and that we reach that goal. Uh, Eradication of poverty, by better quality education, healthcare, jobs, navigating the possible recession that is coming our way because of Ukraine and Russia. And there's so much already there, and if the person can barely string two sentences together, why are you asking to be our president? So it's not personal. I don't even know her personally, never met her. So it's not. But as a public official, you're fair game for my criticism. Uh, Hard to be me says what MSM fails to grasp is that the days where they play kingmaker are gone. No one of the least trusted institution. That's why debates mean less and narrative they push is less destructive. Di Salakop says, Lenny says if she becomes president, di daw matatakot magsalita against her. Meanwhile, she wants social media censorship and supporters are always threatening to file lawsuits, aka lawyers for Lenny. See how disorganized their narratives are. She can't even align her statements with her fanatic supporters. How the hell will she unite the country? This woman will just say anything to win, even if she's sounding crazy. Tumitilaok na yung manok, attorney, sabi ni Marl Acheta. Actually, those are, ano yung fighting cocks? They're not mine. They belong to the guards. Sabi ni Joe Albo, basta ako, wait ko pa si Tatay Diggs kung sino suportahan niya. Yun ang iboto ko sayang naman. Sigurado ako yung kandidato niya, yun yung magtutuloy ng kanyang legasiya. Kahit pang barangay captain, sabi ni Diswiso, di siya pwede. And you notice we don't even talk too much about the other candidates because sometimes it's just not worth it. I will talk about halimbawa yung plataforma ni Sir Ernie Abella because he has good ideas. We can talk about sino pa ba yung mga tumatakbo? Some of the issues that are being raised. Halimbawa, I will not vote for Luke Espiritu because I disagree with his party mates. Pero he did explain silang dalawa ni Calyodi did explain how insurgencies begin. how terrorism starts. Why is it that people raise arms against their government? Why do they rebel? Mostly it's because they are angry at a society that has left them behind. And being left behind can mean different things. Like, napabayaan na sila. They live in poverty. They don't know where their next meal is going to come from. They're angry. They see other people benefiting from from their participation in society, and sila they can barely make ends meet. So poverty is a root cause of our insurgency and recessionist movements and terrorist activities. So we have to address that. Yung lack of justice, yung perception that the poor are more likely to be found guilty in criminal cases than it is for somebody who's rich. And it isn't always about the lawyers. Sometimes, have you noticed that there's certain people who seem to evade the reach of the laws? Halimbawa, Dick Gordon, yun na ba napansin? Other people, kung hampas lupa kang employee tapos inignore mo yung notice na binigay ng COA na magsoli ka ng pera, aba, nakasuhan ka na, na-dismiss ka na sa serbisyo. And Senator Gordon still has the temerity to say na, pasod na yan, wala na yan. But you hear about cases being filed against certain officials, and at the back of your mind, you think, will this prosper? Because I can't see this person going to jail. And sure enough, even if we're absolutely sure that this person did commit a crime, they never end up in jail. Whereas other people, they go through the process. I remember, may nagsabi, there's a friend of ours had a case. Tapos sinabi ko, naku, kawawa naman to. Baka maano siya. Baka masuspindi, baka maganyan. Sabi, yun pa. Sikat yun eh. It's not gonna happen to him or her. So, as it turns out, hindi nga nangyari kasi super sikat at government employee yun or government official yun. Another thing, why isn't Laila de Lima being disbarred? Why is the IBP not, there was a disbarment case filed against her. I don't know if it had been dismissed. Pero if an ordinary lawyer had done what she did, ignore the order from the Supreme Court, she would have been found in contempt and could have been disbarred if she wasn't Laila de Lima, but she was the Secretary of Justice at the time. And so she got off. Again, kung hampas lupa, bakit ma, ma, more likely na na-impose ng penalty yung tao na yon. So, when people feel that they have been left behind in the sense that all of these laws, the harsh criminal laws are they're never going to get away. But you see other people who do get away with it. And it makes you wonder, and that's also one of the reasons people join insurgencies. And so I'm thankful na in the process of the debates and interviews na explain yan. It should put us on notice that we should be more compassionate, that we should understand that we have to solve things, hard things like poverty, the lack of healthcare, or yung kakulangan ng ating healthcare system, all that, because satisfied people, they're not going to rebel. Ngayon, merong iba dyan na lumalaban sa gobyerno because they want to be the ones to take over. Ibang kwento naman yan. Pepe Malonzo says, will Lenlen's alleged collab with communists result in the early 70s proclamation rally ng liberals na may nagsabog ng Granada? Will Lenlen benefit from this? What do you mean? You mean if acts of violence are committed in the name of winning an election? I really don't see people going to that extreme, huh? We don't and will never encourage any acts of violence. Now, some people seem to think that that could be a means to an end. We should never, ever, ever even consider that that's remotely acceptable. Guys, why do you keep asking about the estate taxes? I already talked about it at the start of this live. Sabi ni Esperance Guy, I'm worried that only Villar is able to be among the top 10 senatorial candidates from the UniTeam. Then let's turn that worry into a campaign. We have to take the campaign away from just social media. I mean, of course, wag nating kakalimutan ng social media, but we need to make sure that our candidates are heard and seen by as many people as possible. And not everybody is on social media. It creates a bubble then for us. We think that if these people are popular on social media, they should be way ahead in the surveys. It's not true, as we know very well. Diba? Not everybody sees this. So we have to make sure that they are seen, they're heard by people who are not on social media. I think that is our weakness. Kailangan ipakilala natin sina Attorney Gadon, si Gibo Chodoro, Congressman Marcoleta, Sir Manny Piñol, Attorney Harry Roque. I think they should always and constantly, we should say their names, ask our friends and relatives to vote for them gently, walang pilitan. Don't be yellow or pink. Diba? Yung mga yan, pilitan yan. Or at least that's how they sound like when they're on my wall. Right? Uh, Sabi ni Terraria, 7 out of 12 senators from UniTeam pa lang nakapasok sa latest SWS survey. Um, Sabi ni Orly Lapus, I guess you're not also invited to the unholy nuptial of Lenlen and Kiko. I don't know what you're talking about. Let me see. Let's not fall prey to apathy, sabi ni Get Real. I can bet some of us would be too lazy or too confident of our candidates' ability to actually go out and vote. Not voting is failing your country. Well, in my case, I will probably be working on election day. So, but yeah, we should go out and vote. To be honest, I want unity on the executive leadership, but I want diversity on our legislation for different perspectives. Sabi ni Hard to be me. That is how I will vote. I have Balita and Dr. Padilla. I disagree with your choices, but to each his own. Uh, Avid fan of Karambola Tambayan and Luminous si Ma'am Mariam Nasra Molina from Hong Kong until here in Sweden. Very informative at inspiring ang show ninyo. Uh, Sabi ni Fe, yung supporters niya at handlers, hinahayaan lang siya magsalita ng hindi niya alam kahit ng mga bastos at nonsense. Well, okay, let me this. Hindi ako opposed to Madam Lenny reading the posters of her followers and some of which were a little racy, I have to admit. Pero ako kasi I don't like to judge people based on their sexual orientation or their expression of their sexuality. So, wala na po dapat tayo yung mga tinatawag na POK, POK. Di ba? Very hesitant to use it. I don't want to get taken down. If a woman wants to have multiple sexual partners, that is her choice. As long as it's between consenting adults. Para sa akin, I'm not a position to judge her expression of her own sexuality. If a man wants to do that, then sige, by all means. Of course, they've been doing that for quite some time. Men are a little freer to express their sexuality or than women, but yeah, go ahead. So I'm not going to I'm not nor am I going to condemn LGBTQ for their own expressions. I think that that we really should be moving forward. We cannot judge people on their proclivities, even on their sexual behavior. As long as what they're doing is not illegal, it would be unfair for us to judge. So ang dami nga nagsasabi, bastos yung sinasabi ni Lenny and all that. I'm not that prudish eh. Para sa akin, sure, by all means, knock yourself out. It's not something that I would oppose. I'm more amazed at the fact that she can actually read. I'm kidding. But yung mga ganon, it's not something that I'm going to get all heated up about. It's sure, by all means, whatever floats your boat, right? It's like a person who likes flowers as opposed to a person who doesn't like flowers. They're both equally possibly good people, and I shouldn't judge them on whether or not they like flowers. If somebody wants to sleep around, which is actually a bad and judgmental term, but if a person wants to have multiple sexual partners, who wants to to express it, and as long as that isn't illegal, and there's no and there's always consent involved, sure. I don't consider these things bastos. Um, Kumbaga, benefit of the liberal mindset. Ito, sabi ni Hard to Be Me, why do you think the LGBTQ pro-choice Crown advocate for Lenny when clearly she's one of the most conservative candidates? You know what? You're right. I did notice that. BBM is the true progressive in the race. Is it purely identity politics? I think it's really just the kampihan eh. Diba? Regardless of the, uh, I like nga the expression BBM is a lot more progressive. You're right. His views about about divorce and the role of women, and even abortion. Like ako, I share the same views as Attorney Luke Espiritu. I will never uh, impose abortion on women who don't want it, but I think that women who want it, and as long as it is consistent with their faith or their beliefs, then sure, by all means. But I mean, I'm not in a position to tell somebody to have a baby when clearly she would be incapable of doing it, or incapable of raising it, or dealing with the emotional the upheaval that that's going to entail. It's not me. It's not for me to judge that person. I'm pro divorce. I understand abortion, but right now it's still a criminal act. So you can't, diba? For me, the question of abortion will always come down to when is the uh, when does the soul enter the body? At what stage in the development, and all that. So it's an argument I will just have with myself. I'm not going to impose it on anybody, and I hope nobody imposes their beliefs on me. I believe in the freedom of each person to choose. So you're right, no, ma'am. BBM is the more progressive one. Lenny doesn't even believe in divorce, which because so many OFWs have already gone to countries where divorce is just it's in the ordinary course of a day. No, naman, not that. Where divorce is it's available to everybody. I think that many of our OFWs have grown very progressive in their views towards marriage, and you know that it's Lenny who's really oh you're right. You're right. That's an excellent observation. Si Mayor Sara din po progressive but not ultra-left progressive compared to other VP candidates. Which other VP candidates are ultra-left progressive? You mean Walden Bello? Okay. Okay, sige. You know, I used to admire Walden Bello, but I think that he's mostly pandering, he's playing to the cameras, and that's not the real Walden Bello that you see. Uh, Sabi ni Eduardo Ayeras Alienado, in fairness, you have a genuine concern for Dick Gordon's biases for him not to be voted again in the Senate, replaced by our new senatorial bets represented under UniTeams. It's about time. Yes, I do. I'm very, very concerned. You know what? I don't really like to have people who are, yung tipong halang na yung bituka, matagal na silang nasa Senado and matagal na silang nag enjoy ng power and all that. But I'm not saying that every single uh, re-electionist should be rejected. Like ako, I would like to consider JV Ejercito. Not if for anything, it's because he can complete the business of fixing the universal healthcare law. Yun talaga yung concern ko because it's necessary. The universal healthcare law is absolutely necessary in helping us eradicate poverty, or at least absolute poverty. Yung talagang walang-wala. Uh, I think that healthcare is a right, and so that we must be working on it day in and day out, so that we will never again condemn a family to to poverty for generations simply because one family member had gotten sick. It's a right. For me, it's a right. I don't believe in the commercialization of medicine, but I understand how the system works now. But we have to temper this capitalism in our in medicine. We want people who are sick to get the kind of care that everybody, every single person deserves. That's why, for me, it's important that the Universal Healthcare Act be looked into the way the way it's being executed right now, and and to fix some of the quirks that are in it and set a timetable for the officials who are administering it. So that's why I would consider JV. Sabi ni Ma'am Karen, di po progressive si Walden, war freak lalo na sa libre pero di daw masarap sa food. So hard. Grabe. I think it was just being, it was just being nasty. Or Sabi ni Ma'am Evelyn Cordero, we love you to the moon and back. Thank you for all that you do. Your fans from Toronto, three of us are watching. But it's nice how I wish. Thank you. You know, at one of these days when it's easier to travel and cheaper and I can afford more of it, I really want to see people who I just see here online. Yung tipong makapagbiyahe-biyahe man lang and see all of our followers and friends that are really just are mostly just online. I really do want to see you guys one of these days. Gladys Bolnick says, kailan niyo po i-reveal ang senators ninyo? Well, what I'm going to do is make a list of senators for consideration. Kasi yung absolutes ko, yung 5, tapos na yon. So, as usual, it's Sekmani, Spox Harry, Gibo Chodoro, ano pa ba to? Shoot! Congressman Marcoleta. Uh, hardcore na ako dyan sa mga Attorney Larry, don't forget Attorney Larry. So hard na yan sa akin. Kumbaga hardcore. Not gonna change like ever. Mayanig na yung mundo and all that. But for the rest, I will come up with a list of recommendations. Uh, uh, Kumbaga, please consider the following. Pati dun sa party list, please consider the following. So there'll be more than one party list, and I might have more or less senators being recommended than there are. Kasi 12 yan, di ba? It's possible that I could have more recommendations than there are slots, or I might have less. But definitely yung 5 na yan, hardened decision na yan. Wala nang palit-palit yan. Sabi ni Kung Pham, why most don't want federal parliamentary form of government? I don't think they're opposed to it. We've talked to a lot of people, halimbawa si Gibo. Ang gusto ni Gibo is not to tie us down to a particular form. Kailangan we create a system that will work for us. We don't need to follow the formulas of other countries. We have to be more open than that. So he's not opposed to it. He understands that there has to be some kind of systems change. So we change. But let's not get tied into particular formulas. Um, there are others who have expressed, how do you call this? Who have expressed concern. And this was something that Inday Sara herself had expressed before. How do we deal with warlords? How about the insurgency? If you have a federalist system, all they have to do, the let's say the new pink army might decide na, oh, let's go to this particular how do you call this, federalist state is vulnerable. Attack lang tayo dun sa lugar na yun and take over, and then maybe we can have a secession after that. So we need to be able to talk about safeguards for these things. Sure, there's going to be a national government pa rin, but like we said, there are vulnerabilities, which is why I am opposed to a particular formula, the same as Gibo. I would like to create a system that is our own. If it's parliamentary, then parliamentary it is, but it has to be uniquely our own. If we're going to have a federalist system, sure, but we have to work out the kinks. No problem with that one. But some people are hesitant. They're not saying they're opposed to it, pero we have to have a reality check also. President Duterte, if you had listened to him before, he said he gave up on the idea, not because he disagreed with the form, but because people were expecting it to be changed right away within his term. And if they were going to do that, then it would entail a lot of money and effort. And there's so many things to take care of. So, in-address muna niya yung mga pressing issues. Pag nakaangat-angat ng konti, then that is also for consideration. Now, some people are impatient and they want it right away, right now, and all that. For me, if the people are ready, then by all means. But understand also the kind of work that it will require for us to put to fix everything, to set in place the infrastructure, the machinery, the systems, the laws, the operationality of the whole thing. It is not something that I would like to impose like immediately within a 6-year term. I want us to be able to make sure that everybody gets caught up and we're always addressing the weaknesses as we go along. I just want it to be rational, that's all. So that's assuming that, we come up with a formula, the kind of system that will work for us. Now, how do we figure that out? We have to think along cultural lines. Now, the problem is the lack of cultural awareness also. So that's another thing that we also have to take care of, either before we do that or while we're doing that, creating a better awareness, a better national sense of national consciousness, kumbaga, aware tayo sa mga identities na natin. We have a firm grasp on who we are, and we're able to differentiate ourselves, and that we have, kumbaga, gotten to the point where we are a cohesive whole. We're a country. Sabi ni Ma'am Pinay, it's hard to actually perfect the universal healthcare law. Oh, I'm not looking for perfection. Just a wider coverage, better coverage. If we do not have input from doctors per se, JV laid down the framework, but he isn't a doctor to understand the nuances of the law. Well, ako, I disagree with the need for having to have a doctor create the law. What we need is a doctor to operationalize it. But the basics, the principles, and the doctrines have to be there, because some of the things also that doctors want might be illegal. So. Uh, Sabi ni Marlon Salvador Bandal, I have a fear that if BBM wins and calls for a change in the form of government or changing the 87 Constitution, gagawa ng spin ng mainstream media na gusto lang ni BBM na ma-extend ang kanyang term. Well, then that becomes our job, to defend the president and to defend the republic. Sometimes, even from people who, although they mean well, they're not doing it right. Sabi ni Glorine Castillo, shout out to Team Replay, para sumaya naman kahit madalas di makasama sa live, especially due to the time difference. Oh, you're absolutely right. All right, for those who are watching this on the replay, mabuhay po kayo. Maraming salamat at tinatangkilik po ninyo ang Luminous. And maybe on that note, we can end this because may karambola po tayo bukas at kailangan ko pang mamaya! Kailangan ko pang gumising ng maaga. So maraming salamat sa lahat ng sumubaybay sa live na ito ngayon. May karambola po tayo mamayang 8 o'clock ng umaga. We'll see you then. Si Attorney Nick Nangit po ang tambayan bukas. So, maraming salamat. Tulog na yung mga nagpupuyat. Kasama, pasensya na po. Pinuyat ko na naman kayo. But I really wanted to conduct this late because we had the live earlier today before 5. So parang jahe naman na parang magkasunod yung live, di ba? Baka isipin ninyo, ina-saturate ko kayo, magsawa kayo kaagad sa akin. So maraming salamat. Huwag pong kakalimutan. Check nyo po sa Luminous kung naka-follow pa rin po kayo. Kung hindi pa, go back. Follow na lang po uli. At para dun sa hindi pa nakaka-follow, please do. And mag-subscribe din po sa YouTube so that again, if anything happens to our Facebook, then there's always one place to find us. You will always find us on Luminous, whether it's on YouTube or on Facebook. Maraming salamat po. Saan pa ba ako pwede gumawa ng account? I mean, I have an IG, but it's all, very self-indulgent selfies and pictures of my grandson. So maraming salamat, guys. Thank you for another intelligent discussion. Remember that I learn from you as much as you claim you learn from me. Thank you very much, guys. See you on Karambola.